in secret. Western partners have been careful with supplying long-range missiles Kyiv needs for its 4-month-old counter-offensive, fearing it would provoke the Kremlin. Ukraine has pledged not to use them inside Russia's territory, but said the powerful weapons would alter the course of the Russo-Ukraine war, now in its 20th month. Senior officials say deploying the weapons would let Ukraine disrupt previously unreachable supply lines, air bases, and rail networks used by Russia in occupied territories.
600 days have passed since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and there seems to be no respite in fighting. In Kharkiv, a city close to the front line, people seem to have adapted to life at war, with locals taking on volunteer work to help each other.
As tens of thousands of people fled the Russian assault on Kharkiv, Yehor Horoshko decided to stay. He shows me the site of the missile strike on Freedom Square that blew out the windows of his former office at a software firm and killed several people.
When you many years you live in a peaceful life, and when someday suddenly come people try to kill everybody, it's very, very, very hard to express this feeling. It's absolutely total uncertainty about anything in your life.
Kharkiv is just 40 kilometers from the Russian border, and for the first 2 months of the invasion, it was a frontline city. Shells and missiles struck sometimes dozens of times in a single day. After his IT office closed down, Horoshko kept busy. Within a week of the start of the full-scale war, he and his wife had opened up a volunteer kitchen to cook food and collect supplies for soldiers. They called it Hell's Kitchen. Almost 600 days later, the kitchen's volunteers are still churning out bread, borscht, and other Ukrainian dishes, now mostly for the city's chronically underfunded hospitals.
The menu today is soup with pasta, chicken with sauce, and some porridge.
Dmitro works 4 days a week at a garage fixing cars, and the other 3 days working in Hell's Kitchen. He counts these days as his days off because he only works about 4 hours.
What can I say? Some people are on the front line and some people are on the home front, and we need to do something.
The volunteers here make about 1,000 meals per day, operating continuously. No weekends, no holidays.
The guys on the front line don't have a break. Russians don't make a break to give us a rest. Yeah, it's not our choice. In fact, when you doing something, you are in a better mood when you just sitting and reading news.
Kharkiv has been quieter since Russian troops were pushed back to the border last year, but drones and long-range missiles continue to claim lives. I ask him how long he thinks the war may last.
It's a very, very hard question. I believe all people in Ukraine want to have answer for it. Yeah, but for us, the victory is when on the border of our country, it will be safe. We don't want anything else. We just want to be safe in our country.
Horoshko and his wife are living off their savings now, but he says Hell's Kitchen can continue to deliver meals indefinitely. Life's expenses are pretty low, he says, when you focus on the things that matter most.
6 months of war in Sudan has had a deadly impact on the lives, livelihoods and health of the people. More than 9,000 deaths, 5.6 million displaced people and refugees, cholera and deindustrialization. The war that broke out between General al-Burhani and Mohammed Hamdani Daglo has brought Sudan to its knees and ravaged its capital Khartoum. A health system that was already weak and struggling owing to conflict, disease outbreaks and hunger is now buckling under the enormous pressure caused by the war. Health hangs in the balance in the face of mass displacement, injuries, hunger, floods and disease outbreaks. In a context of attacks on health and scarcity of medical supplies and equipment, health workers and cash to cover operational costs. Across Sudan, the fragile health system is struggling. Emergency rooms are congested and many hospitals have closed completely. With no end to the war in sight, NGOs are calling for a substantial increase in efforts to provide humanitarian aid and for people of Sudan to be allowed unhindered access to medical aid. Massive wildfires have swept through thousands of hectares of Bolivian Amazon, local officials have said. Forest fires have destroyed crops in the Santa Cruz region and ravaged thousands of hectares of Noel Camp Mercado National Park, a gateway to the pristine Amazonian rainforest. The Santa Cruz government said on Tuesday there are 12 active forest fires, mainly in the municipalities of Sant Matias, Concepcion and San Ignacio. Helicopters have been deployed to help firefighters and authorities on the ground. Let's listen into what the Director of Natural Resources of Santa Cruz, Yovenka Rosado, had to say about the current situation in Santa Cruz.
El departamento registra 3 municipios con emergencias por incendios forestales. Estos municipios son San Ignacio, San Matías y Concepción. Hasta el momento se han atendido 381 emergencias por incendios forestales.
Battling the harsh summer, more than 100 Bolivians undertook a march to a dusty plain near the Inachaca Dam overlooking La Paz city. Wondering why? They gathered under the scorching sun to pray for rain in order to end the severe drought that poses a massive threat to their water supply. The 10 reservoirs supplying La Paz, one of the country's largest cities with about 2.2 million residents, have only about 135 days worth of water left. As warned by Bolivia's state-owned water company, EPSAS. If La Paz city doesn't receive significant rainfall, the high-altitude city's water supplies will be exhausted by February. Despite the rainy season being due to start in December, the latest forecasts don't look promising. Let's hear some reactions coming in from La Cumbre, where over 100 Bolivians braved the scorching sun, marching for hope. They've gathered near the Inachaca Dam, praying for rain to end a severe drought.
Hemos desobedecido.
En este momento hemos salido aquí donde nos ven para clamar por la lluvia. Si en verdad en estos momentos el calentamiento global está afectando a Bolivia, y no solo a Bolivia, sino a todo el mundo entero. Y nosotros necesitamos lluvia para los sembradíos, lluvia para los alimentos, lluvia para nosotros mismos.
El cambio climático que se está provocando, estas son las causas, ¿no?, que está pasando la humanidad. Y nosotros por eso hemos venido aquí, a este lugar, para poder unirnos en oración y en un solo clamor orar a Dios para que pueda hacer caer la lluvia sobre la tierra.
One of the world's most photographed and iconic landmarks, the Sydney Opera House, will turn 50 on October 20th, 2023, taking 14 years to complete on the site of an old tram shed on Sydney Harbour. The architectural marvel, designed by a Danish architect, was opened by Britain's Queen Elizabeth II in 1973. Now recognized as an emblem and symbol of Australia, it was UNESCO listed in 2007 and has hosted world-class performances inside and outside the venue. Let's talk about China now. China's economy grew at a faster than expected clip in the third quarter, data showed on Wednesday, while domestic consumption also picked up pace last month, suggesting the recent recovery may carry enough steam to reach Beijing's full-year growth target. China's Q3 GDP growth at 4.9% beats forecasts, which was 4.4%, driven by stimulus measures despite a 9% drop in property investment, rising retail sales, which are around 5.5%, and industrial output offer hope. Recovery boosts market confidence, supporting Beijing's 5% full-year growth target.
Investors found grounds for optimism Wednesday over China's economic prospects. New figures showed growth beating forecasts in the third quarter. GDP expanded 4.9% from a year earlier, beating analyst expectations of 4.4%. The world's number 2 economy has showed signs of stabilising, partly thanks to a slew of stimulus measures. That includes more public works spending and interest rate cuts. But headwinds remain strong, not least the country's protracted property crisis. A host of developers have defaulted on their debts amid the turmoil in the sector, and Beijing is under pressure to step in with more support measures. Wednesday's data showed property investment down more than 9% over the first 9 months of this year. But other figures offered more grounds for hope. Retail sales, seen as a good gauge of consumption, rose 5.5% last month, comfortably beating forecasts. Industrial output also grew more than expected. All told, the numbers suggest a recent recovery might have enough steam for Beijing to hit its full-year growth target of around 5%. The figures lifted sentiment on equity markets, with Asian shares pairing earlier losses following the news.
Ethiopian PM hails Africa's potential at Belt and Road Summit in Beijing. China's President Xi Jinping defends BRI, rejecting Western skepticism. China emphasizes global openness, while critics worry about Chinese influence and debt burdens on poorer nations. Africa is now releasing its potential and capacity with the formerly sidelined continent, harnessing its demographic dividend and natural resources and becoming an economic, political and social powerhouse.
Africa is realizing its potential and becoming an economic, political and social powerhouse, Ethiopia's Prime Minister said on Wednesday. Abiy Ahmed was speaking at the Belt and Road Initiative Summit in Beijing, where he said the formerly sidelined continent was harnessing its demographic dividend and natural resources. He added that Africa has particularly suffered the consequences of the climate crisis and conflicts in other parts of the world, and that we cannot be idle observers in forums that affect common well-being. Representatives from more than 130 countries, largely in the global south, are attending the summit. Opening the ceremony, China's Xi Jinping lauded the BRI project, which was launched 10 years ago, with a vision of building global infrastructure and energy networks connecting Asia with Africa and Europe. He also pushed against Western efforts to reduce dependence on the Chinese economy.
A better world leads to a better China. And a better China contributes to a better world. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China's doors of openness to the outside world are opening wider.
Western leaders insist that their goal is to de-risk, not decouple from China. They argue that they want to diversify supply chains that have become overly dependent on the world's second largest economy. Analysts say Western skepticism over Xi's plans stems from suspicions over the way it would extend Chinese influence. They've also alleged that China's infrastructure lending has saddled some poorer countries with loans they can't repay. China has at times bristled at criticism of its initiative, saying it carries anti-Chinese prejudice.
Guinea-Bissau's capital plunged into darkness as Turkish company Q ship cut electricity due to a $17 million unpaid debt. The country's economy minister aims to resolve the $15 million arrears within 15 days. Q ship providing all of Guinea-Bissau's electricity since 2019. It cited non-payment, working with officials to resolve the issue. They said Q ship previously cut power to Sierra Leone's Freetown for a $40 million debt.
Guinea-Bissau's capital was plunged into darkness on Tuesday after Turkish company Q ship cut off electricity supplies. The West African country's economy minister said that was due to an unpaid debt of $17 million. Suleiman Saidi added that arrangements were underway to pay $15 million of arrears owed by the electricity and water company of Guinea-Bissau. He promised the issue would be resolved in 15 days. Q ship is one of the world's largest operators of floating power plants. It has, according to its website, been providing 100% of Guinea-Bissau's electricity needs since 2019. A Car Powership spokesperson said about the situation in Guinea-Bissau that its floating power plant was unable to continue operating following a protracted period of non-payment. A statement added that the company was working around the clock with officials to resolve the issue. It's not the first time Car Powership has been involved in such a dispute. Last month, it switched off the electricity supply to Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, due to an unpaid debt of around $40 million.
The UNESCO World Heritage Site of Angkor Archaeological Park in Cambodia used to attract millions of tourists from all over the world. But since the pandemic, not many come here anymore. Businesses and hotels are struggling to survive. Now the new airport in Siem Reap is also open.
Praying for tourists to come back. This used to be one of Southeast Asia's most popular travel destinations, Angkor Wat. But nearly 1 year after Cambodia reopened, just a few visitors have returned, like this wedding couple, who want to have the temples all to themselves for once.
For us, this is great. It's a fantastic opportunity to get our photo shoot done.
For hotels, however, the absence of tourists is a disaster. Since the end of the pandemic, only about 60% of the establishments are back in business. Thousands of jobs are gone, and so is the support from the government. During the pandemic, hotels received $40 a day per employee, and value-added tax was also eliminated.
When the business reopens, actually all expenses are coming back, including, full payment to staff, and yet also the bank also have to come back and ask us to repay back the loan interest and all this kind of thing. So we are actually in somewhere quite a bit more severe than the crisis.
He says the tourism advertising campaign should have been much better. What gives him hope is that Siem Reap received a 150 million facelift during the pandemic, and a new airport was built. This should finally bring the largest group of tourists from China back into the country. For hotels, souvenir stores, and also their makers, this would be very essential. The post-COVID crisis here has hit the entire tourism value chain.
During the pandemic, we experienced a big brain drain from the tourism industry in Siem Reap. Qualified personnel, people with good language skills moved into the capital city, into other industries, and are not willing to come back into the tourism industry because it seems not reliable.
At this weaving shop, there's concern that unique skills won't be passed on to the next generation unless the situation changes fast. An estimated 2 million international tourists are expected to visit the temples this year, compared to 6.5 million in 2019.
I still remember very well about times before COVID-19. It was crazy. It's full of people, of tourism.
For tourists who want to explore archaeological sites without the crowds, the timing couldn't be better. Getting an exclusive snapshot in front of one of the 7 wonders of the world has never been easier.
Hollywood's 2024 release calendars are getting scrambled as if the actors' strike continues. One studio executive says some major films slated for next year could slip into 2025. The strike, now in its 14th week, comes at a difficult time for major media companies. The traditional cable TV business is declining, and so is the ad performance. The ad performance is weak, and streaming services are mostly losing most of their money. Add to those concerns a struggling movie business that could see holiday quarter box office proceeds fall over 30% below pre-health crisis levels as companies push back releases. Independent production companies are among the hardest hit, with some executives saying they have already cut costs and are now contemplating layoffs. Fully automatic robo-taxis are driving around in San Francisco. There is no human being behind the wheel. The vehicles are steered by artificial intelligence. How are people reacting to these innovative vehicles?
Driverless cars like this one are a common sight here in famously tech-friendly San Francisco. Cameras, radar and LiDAR technology continuously scan the car's surroundings. The cabs use cloud-based map systems to navigate their way through the city. But the technology isn't perfect. Cars don't always wait where they should, and often stop when they get confused, blocking traffic.
I don't know why we're stopped.
Accidents have happened. One car crashed into a fire truck in San Francisco, sparking protest, especially amongst taxi drivers.
They are a menace. They stop unexpectedly. They actually have broken the law many times. We see them signal one way and then go another way.
Sharon Giovinazzo is more convinced. Her non-profit is partnered with an autonomous car provider. And for a blind person, no driver means no discrimination.
One of the things I found out with taxis and rideshare services, because I choose to have a guide dog to navigate the world, is they will leave me standing on the side of the street and they will cancel rides even after they pull up and they see the dog. They don't want to have the dog in their vehicle. Whereas here, there's no opinion because there's no driver.
And autonomous vehicles can navigate traffic more smoothly than a human being, she says.
When you're like, or you know, that sudden stop that's made, or you know, you feel people swerving and people honking at you and not being able to see what's going on. It's fearful. It really is. I've never had one fear sitting in one of these. I just say that it's welcome to the future.
So far, robo-taxis are something of an experiment. And not all people in San Francisco want their city to be a test track. But it seems they are here to stay.
Artificial intelligence, that is AI, is helping to train brain surgeons to perform critical operations more effectively and safely. According to the UK's National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, that is NHNN, Gabe Singer has more to say on this.
Could artificial intelligence be used to make brain surgery safer? At this university in London, trainee surgeon Daniel Khan is taking part in a mock operation, during which he's assisted by a real-time video feed, as is typical in brain surgery. But what's new here is that the footage is being analyzed by AI to help Khan better understand what he's seeing. The AI system, which is under development at University College London, highlights sensitive or critical structures in the brain. Neurosurgeon Hanny Marcus believes it has the potential to make brain surgery safer and more effective.
So I'm very bullish that in the medium to long term, the AI will be helping lots of surgeons do lots of operations better than they otherwise can.
Marcus says the AI system analyzed video of more than 200 pituitary gland tumor operations and gained around 10 years worth of experience in a fraction of the time. That knowledge means the AI can now not only help navigate to the correct area of the brain, but also know what should be happening at any stage of the procedure, making it a valuable training aid.
What we're really trying to do is apply AI, or artificial intelligence, to support surgeons doing brain tumor surgery at the base of the brain. And what this practically entails is us training the AI with hundreds of videos, telling it, if you like, what structures are what, and then at some point over that period, the AI becomes really good itself at recognizing things and able to support other surgeons who are perhaps less experienced in advising them what to do next.
Assistant Professor of Robotics and AI Sophia Bano explains how that might look in a real operation.
There can be scenarios where clinicians unintentionally are very close to a very critical structure such as optic nerve. This can have any damage or a slight more pressure on the optic nerve can have long-term complications on the patient side. So this whole tool will alert the surgeon during the procedure if there is any risk of potential complications, so they can recalibrate themselves during the procedure.
Khan, who was also involved in developing the software that is now helping him learn, says the AI system has been a valuable tool in his training. It could also provide him with step-by-step guidance during a procedure, similar to having a senior surgeon standing over your shoulder.
I think as I progress as a surgeon, there might be stages where I wonder, have I done enough of a particular part of the procedure and should I move on? And actually having that sort of assistant in the background as a reassurance to look at and say, well, yeah, actually at this stage, out of the hundreds of videos of experts that this algorithm has watched, the experts would probably start moving on to the next phase. It's a useful double check.
According to UCL, the system could be ready to be used in operating theaters within 2 years.
A Pakistan High Court barred authorities from arresting former three-time Prime Minister Naas Sharif, who is scheduled to arrive back home on Saturday after 4 years in self-exile. Sharif got a protective bail which ordered authorities not to arrest him until he himself appears before the court on October 24. Sharif was convicted on corruption charges in 2018. Sharif did not complete any of his 3 terms as Prime Minister between 1990 to 1993, 1997 to 1999 and 2013 to 2017. He was removed as Premier by a military-backed president in 1993, ousted in a military coup in 1999 and disqualified by a court in 2017. And now the latest from Israel. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak landed in Israel on Thursday, that is October 19, beginning a visit in which he will meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog. Sunak shared his condolences for the loss of life in Israel and Gaza. He said that the Gaza Hospital on Tuesday, which killed hundreds of Palestinians, should be a watershed moment for leaders in the region and across the world to come together to avoid further dangerous escalation of conflict.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be here in Israel at this important time. Above all, I'm here to express my solidarity with the Israeli people. You have suffered an unspeakable, horrific act of terrorism, and I want you to know that the United Kingdom and I stand with you. I'm looking forward to my meetings later today with the Prime Minister and President, and I very much hope that they will be productive meetings. Thank you again.
In the aftermath of the devastating Gaza hospital bombing, which claimed the lives of at least 500 people, Israel announced on Wednesday that it would allow Egypt to deliver limited humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The hospital bombing had placed significant strain on Gaza's already struggling medical system.
Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have headed towards southern Gaza in recent days, heeding the warning from Israel of an impending ground invasion. The Rafah border in the south represents the only viable escape from Gaza and a lifeline to the outside world. The Rafah border is controlled by Egypt and is the only exit from Gaza that does not lead to Israeli territory. In response to Hamas' attack earlier this month, Israel has imposed a total blockade of Gaza, cutting off electricity to the territory and stopping all supplies of food and fuel. That means the only likely route for humanitarian aid to enter Gaza is via Rafah from Egypt's Sinai region. Egyptian aid trucks have moved closer to the crossing, but it was unclear when or whether they will be able to cross into Gaza. Gazans with dual citizenship have also gathered at the border, hoping to be allowed through.
I am Norwegian citizen. I come every day to the Rafah border. We heard from our embassy. They called us and they told us to come to the border.
Egypt is wary of insecurity near the border with Gaza in northeastern Sinai, where it faced an Islamist insurgency that peaked after 2013 and has now largely been suppressed. Since Hamas took control in Gaza in 2007, Egypt has helped enforce a blockade of the enclave, heavily restricting the flow of people and goods. In 2008, tens of thousands of Palestinians crossed into Sinai after Hamas blasted holes in border fortifications, prompting Egypt to build a stone and cement wall. Arab countries have deep-rooted fears that Israel's latest war with Hamas in Gaza could spark a new wave of permanent displacement from land where Palestinians want to build a state. For Arabs and Palestinians, current events have echoes of Nakba, or catastrophe, when many Palestinians were forced from their homes during the 1948 war that accompanied Israel's creation.
Also, Israel's government says it will now allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza from Egypt after a request from US President Biden during his visit to Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, questions linger over the explosion at a Gaza hospital on Tuesday that Hamas and the Israeli military have accused each other of triggering.
Israel says it's lifting part of its blockade of Gaza after a request by US President Joe Biden during his visit. Tel Aviv said on Wednesday it won't stop aid entering Gaza from Egypt, and the US says Egypt has agreed to reopen its border crossing to let some aid flow into the enclave. This was an airstrike near that border on Wednesday. Truckloads of aid and volunteer workers have been piling up on the Egyptian side for days as the UN warns of a humanitarian catastrophe. The fallout from a blast that hit a Gaza City hospital continues, drawing protests across the Arab world, some violent, and a debate over its cause. Hamas says hundreds of people were killed in the explosion and that it was caused by an Israeli strike. Israel has blamed a failed rocket launch by another faction, Islamic Jihad. It's provided these drone images as evidence, claiming it's not consistent with an airstrike. This was Biden in Israel.
Based on the information we've seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian life during conflict, and I truly grieve for the families who were killed or wounded by this tragedy.
The White House National Security Council echoed Biden in Washington, saying the U.S. assessment was based on analysis of overhead imagery, intercepts, and open-source information. The Israeli military is also accusing Hamas of inflating the number of dead, and it has released an audio conversation it claims is between two Hamas militants discussing a misfired rocket from Islamic Jihad. Islamic Jihad has denied blame.
The World Health Organization says an Israeli order forcing people to evacuate hospitals in northern Gaza is a death sentence. Health facilities in the north of the territory are continuing to treat huge numbers of patients despite dwindling medical supplies, a shortage of beds and repeated power outages. For tens of thousands, the hospitals have also become a de facto refugee shelter. Take a closer look.
The morgue at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital is overflowing. Workers stack corpses in the parking lot outside. Bodies are coming in faster than relatives can claim them, and the hospital has run out of space for the remains. Israel's bombing campaign on the territory of 2.3 million has leveled entire neighborhoods, killing more than 2,000 Palestinians and wounding many more. Some of the injured are being treated in hospital corridors. Many of them are children. A shortage of beds, medical supplies, and power outages have left hospitals in the north struggling to cope. The World Health Organization says forcing the critically ill to move south amounts to a death sentence. It also says the evacuation order has left exhausted health workers facing a choice between abandoning patients or staying behind and putting their own lives at risk. Israel's evacuation order means the clinic became a shelter for more than 35,000 refugees. Many have set up makeshift tents in the front of the building, using carpets, curtains, and whatever they could salvage from their homes.
We received messages on our phones, so we left quickly. We came here to the hospital, but the place is more crowded than the schools. Everyone came here. There are no bathrooms, no food, no water. Nobody cares about us. I was displaced with my family, 16 of us. We go from place to place. May God help us.
The UN is calling on Israel to immediately reverse the evacuation order. But for countless Gazans, it's already too late.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu updates the citizens of Israel on US President Joe Biden's visit amid a raging war.
Citizens of Israel, I would like to update you on several matters from my meeting with US President Joe Biden. Yesterday evening, before the US President left for Israel, I presented him with the concrete proof that it was Islamic Jihad and not the IDF that had fired the missile that struck the hospital in Gaza. I directed our National Public Diplomacy Directorate and the IDF to disseminate this proof. And today the world knows the truth. It will also hear from the UN Secretary Council. This is the first time that a US president has come to Israel in wartime. I spoke with him about the horrors that we face, about the terrible pain of bereavement that has affected all of us, and about the daring of our citizens and the unity among us. During the visit today, we achieved something of utmost importance that greatly contributes to our security. Immense security assistance for the State of Israel of an unprecedented scope, including assistance that further strengthens our war capabilities. Regarding the captives, I clarified three things for President Biden. First, I demanded the return for our captives, and we were working together for their return in every possible way. Second, until their return, we demand Red Cross visits for our captives. Third, we will not allow humanitarian assistance in the form of food and medicines from our territory to the Gaza Strip. President Biden came here with not just comforting and moving words, which touched the heart of the entire nation, but with deeds. In our meeting today, we agreed on actions that will ensure the continuation of our just war. We agreed on cooperation that will change the equation in all sectors and will assist us in achieving our war aims. Citizens of Israel, my brothers and sisters, the people of Israel live, and the people of Israel will win.
The Palestinian and Israeli envoys to the United Nations on Wednesday slammed the United Nations Security Council, which was unable to pass a resolution for a humanitarian pause in the conflict between Palestinian and Israeli forces to allow aid to reach civilians in Gaza.
For over 10 days now, you have witnessed it killing entire families, bomb shelters, schools, hospitals, residential buildings, convoys. You have heard it telling people to head south of Gaza and then bomb the south. It is beyond belief that some still speak of a right to self-defense of an occupying power that has made clear it is seeking blind vengeance, forced transfer, and annihilation of our people. A political disaster is underway, and yet the Security Council of the United Nations is unable to say the only thing that truly matters: stop the bloodshed. I repeat, stop the bloodshed. For those who think they can avert a humanitarian catastrophe and a regional spillover while Israel continues bombing and killing Palestinians, think again. The region is united in telling you it is not possible. Listen to them. The only way to prevent both is to stop this criminal aggression against our people. President, there is no right. Killing more Palestinians will never make Israel more secure. 75 years of experience should have been proof enough for those who want to learn.
So far, this council has not even condemned Hamas for the atrocity it perpetrated, let alone held Hamas fully responsible for the situation in Gaza. But here we are, discussing humanitarian corridors. Does nobody else see how ludicrous this is? Calling for calm, restraint, and ceasefires is like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Such steps will not eradicate the cancer that is Hamas. Humanitarian corridors will not prevent the next atrocity. The only thing that will is the utter obliteration of this satanic entity. What are you doing to prevent this evil?
I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Brazil.
We demand an apology. An apology. The UN and some on this council rush to adopt the lies of ISIS-like terrorists and refuse to accept the hard evidence of a law-abiding democracy. You should apologize. Apologize for never convening the council when Hamas rockets are fired deliberately at Israeli hospitals. Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon was directly hit by a Hamas rockets just last week. Where was the council? Apologize for years of putting your heads in the ground while Hamas ceaselessly built up its war machine in Gaza.
Heads of churches in Jerusalem said the blast at a Gaza hospital is a dreadful and devastating massacre, as they called for the crime against humanity to end. Anglican Archbishop of Jerusalem, Hossam Noam, who led the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem that runs Gaza's Al-Ahli Al-Arabi Hospital, said hospital and churches in the region will remain open for people to seek refuge. Noam also said the hospital received 3 Israeli evacuation notices prior to the blast, without specifying if the warnings were directly related to the blast. It's a wrap from me. Thank you for watching News 9 Live.